Hello everyone, you join me in Mallorca, and in this video it'll be kind of a little bit more vloggy, I reckon, and then we'll talk Formula 1, we'll talk the first half of the season and what I expect for the rest of the season. So let's begin. Oh yeah, and we will of course talk about that ridiculous Hungarian Grand Prix. It's always very tricky to film when you're abroad. So just to summarise, in this video we will go over what I expect for the rest of 2021, that crazy Hungarian Grand Prix, and we'll go over some news headlines like I did in a video when I was away in Costa Rica. I think that worked quite well. So yeah, gonna get on the moped, go back to the villa and chill for a bit. So unless you have a motorbike licence, you can only rent 50cc mopeds, and it is painfully slow. I mean really slow. Not quite what I could rent in Costa Rica, but it will do the job. Hungary. What a race it was. It had pretty much everything. We seem to get a race like that at least once a year, where we have a completely random winner and a completely random order and lots of things going on. And Hungary was 2021's race. So a few takeaways I've got from that race. So it seems midfield supremacy between the likes of Aston Martin, AlphaTauri and Alpine is track dependent. Had that track been a different track, like say Austria or Spain or Monaco or anything, it could have been Aston Martin in Alpine's position or AlphaTauri in Alpine's position. But Hungary suited the Alpine, which is why they had such a great race, and Ocon took an amazing victory. You can say it was lucky, but once he had that luck, he controlled the race and it was a well-deserved victory. So yeah, given the midfield is so close, the supremacy between those three teams in the midfield seems to be very track dependent. And I'll tell you another key takeaway from Hungary: Mercedes have pace. I wasn't expecting that. I was expecting Red Bull to bounce back from Silverstone and kind of knock Mercedes out the park in a way, but they didn't. I thought Hungary would suit Red Bull. It didn't. Mercedes had the upper hand pretty much all weekend, and that is a very good omen for them going into the second half of the season, given you could say for the majority of the first half they've been on the back foot. So the title race is wide open. And finally, the 2022 rule changes are coming at the exact right time. So in Hungary's race we saw two examples of why we need these changes. Firstly, yes, Hungary is very difficult to overtake. We know that. But that problem was exacerbated by the dirty air. Cars couldn't follow each other for the whole race, which meant overtaking was limited unless you had a significant pace advantage, usually tyre related. And also all the intricate bodywork means the cars are just too fragile. A little bit of contact and you lose so much time per lap. So we saw with Verstappen, although that was fairly significant contact, he lost a lot of bodywork on the side of his car, which wouldn't be there on the 2022 car. So that impact would have had less of an effect on his lap times and his performance in that race. So Verstappen suffered, and particularly Daniel Ricciardo also suffered because he had damage on his side pod, which impacted his race, which is why he couldn't really make any progress. So yeah, the 2022 changes are coming at the right time. Formula 1 needs them. Let's hope they're a success. But yeah, other than that, a few other things I'd like to mention from the race. Alpine, I'm really happy for them. Really happy for Ocon and Alonso. Great team spirit there. Great weekend for them. Also like to say Sainz, good race from him. 15th to 4th, and then what was potentially 3rd with Vettel's disqualification, and that is a travesty in its own right. 2nd, he deserves 2nd, but couldn't provide enough fuel. So if that's the case, I mean, it's a good enough reason to disqualify him, because we've seen that in the past. But it's just such a shame for Vettel. We all love Vettel these days. He's doing a great job at Aston Martin, and that 2nd place was very well deserved. See that mountain there behind me? Yeah, I'm going to go up that this afternoon, and up there we can talk about what I expect in the second half of the season. I'll drop my championship prediction as well. Okay, so let's do a few F1 headlines. So the first one I read was Bottas doesn't think that one race will affect his chances of the Mercedes seat for next year. So after causing that pile up at the first corner, Bottas believes that this won't have... Mercedes will look at the bigger picture as to who replaces him for next year, as opposed to blaming him or putting emphasis on that specific event. Now, I still believe that Mercedes will opt to put Russell in. I think the time is right. I think they'll do it. But obviously, Bottas is hopeful. Bottas' future is definitely up for grabs. It's definitely up in the air. It will either be Alfa Romeo, Williams, or leave F1 if he doesn't sign on for Mercedes. Okay, another headline I just read is Mick Schumacher is proud that he didn't crack under pressure when racing with the front runners. Mick Schumacher wasn't afraid to get his elbows out, the likes of Verstappen and Alonso during the Hungarian Grand Prix. I thought he drove a really great and mature race from the German, proving his worth, definitely. So that was a good race from him. Hopefully Haas can get it together for next year. He can have a more competitive car and fight at the front maybe, or definitely further on in the midfield. But yeah, it was a good race from Mick and a well-deserved, was it 10th or I think it was 11th actually, well-deserved 11th place. Especially after that crash in FP3 that meant he couldn't qualify. It just shows things can change so quickly in Formula 1. Another interesting headline I saw after the race, which I thought was quite interesting, was that Lewis Hamilton suspects he's suffering from long COVID. Now, what is long COVID? Long COVID is when people who have coronavirus then suffer with symptoms intermittently for about 6 months afterwards, but obviously aren't contagious. Now, other athletes have suffered from long COVID. I know Paul Pogba did for Manchester United, and now Lewis Hamilton seems or claims to be suffering from long COVID, which means his athletic performance is decreased at times. And as we saw after the race in Hungary, he was very dizzy, very fatigued, like he said. So that would point towards long COVID and the fact he's been battling his health all year, he says. That's a surprise. I didn't know that. Hasn't been reflecting in his form. He's been driving well, but yeah, I thought that was quite interesting. Now, obviously, he had COVID in December, and it's now 7-8 months after that. So yeah, I mean, I guess he could still be suffering from it. Definitely, yeah. No, on the podium, he definitely looked a little bit worse for wear. Right, this hasn't really gone as well as I thought. It is literally just cliff, as you can see. I mean, from a distance, yeah, it looks scalable, but now I'm up here, it's not ideal. It's not really worth it, to be honest. I mean, yeah, look, it's just cliff. I mean, to get to this stage, it was difficult enough. I'll show you the view now. Can't really find a way up there, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, maybe I'll find one in a second, but I reckon what I'm going to do is go down back to the moped. Me on a new day, and this time I've managed to get up a mountain that was a little bit easier to climb, and the view, well, it's not bad, is it? I did say we'd talk about what might happen in the second half of 2021 and my championship predictions, so let's get into that. Now, obviously Mercedes say they're not going to bring a major upgrade for the rest of the season. Red Bull, on the other hand, are. Therefore, as the second half of the season progresses, Red Bull are going to get a lot stronger. Kind of like the first half of the season, where Red Bull kind of end up dominating towards the end. Even though Mercedes are bringing upgrades, albeit minor ones, I feel like Red Bull will have the edge when it comes to development. So in terms of that, Verstappen's got the upper hand. The battle between McLaren and Ferrari will be interesting. I think McLaren will quite comfortably win it. Ferrari will be there or thereabouts, and I think when it comes to those high downforce circuits, they will be strong, although in Hungary they didn't really show too much form, but I think they will be strong. They have the potential to get pole positions and win races out of the blue, whereas McLaren are consistently third best car. I also think Norris will maintain third in the championship. I think Perez and Bottas have proved they're not being consistent enough this season to merit third in the championship. Now, obviously, it's a shame for Aston Martin and AlphaTauri, but I think Alpine will maintain fifth in the Constructors, which is very important for them. The higher up you finish in the Constructors' Championship, the more prize money you get. I think after Hungary, Alpine will be able to maintain fifth in the Constructors. I think the ebb and flow between those three teams is fairly even, and Alpine will want to capitalise on their opportunity, and they'll be getting stronger and stronger throughout the season, I think. So they will maintain fifth. Now, I don't think we're going to hear too much about the driver market until the kind of Japanese Grand Prix, if it goes ahead, and the Russian Grand Prix, that kind of time. I think Russell will go to Mercedes. That's going to happen, I think. If it doesn't this season, then it's a bit of a travesty, to be honest. He deserves that Mercedes seat. I don't think we'll hear much. There's not going to be too much changing in the driving market for 2022, I don't think. It's going to stay relatively similar, apart from obviously a few big moves regarding Russell and Bottas. A lot of the teams are set to stay the same, and I think they will. I think we have more tracks that suit Mercedes in the second half of the season, such as Spa, Monza, lower downforce tracks, and there aren't many street circuits left. So I think in terms of track capability and dependability, Mercedes have the advantage in the second half. Now the big one, who is going to win the championship and the Constructors? Now the big one, who will win that Drivers' Championship? Now, I do believe that Lewis Hamilton will claim an 8th title. Now, why? Two main reasons. Number one, he is always a lot better in the second half of the season. He's been very good in the first half, and he tends to be a lot better in the second half. Look at 2017, look at 2018, look at 2019. He comes alive in that second half of the season, and I think there'll be too much for Red Bull to do.
It is victory number 60. Hamilton wins in Singapore. Extending his scoring streak to 21 races this weekend. He has won in Fuji before. He has won in Suzuka before. He has seen Sebastian Vettel retire from the race. Lewis Hamilton wins the Japanese Grand Prix. He's half a second quicker on this lap, Hamilton. He's going down the inside, Hamilton. He's taking the lead of the Grand Prix as Lewis Hamilton. The lead has changed hands as Lewis Hamilton.
Obviously, you never know. That might not happen this year, but I think it will. I think he will get stronger. And secondly, Hamilton has experience at how to win championships, and Verstappen doesn't. Verstappen is 13 years younger than Lewis Hamilton, let's remember. That's 13 years less F1 experience. Hamilton knows how to see out a championship and win it. He knows when to take risks and when not to take risks. And Verstappen might get rattled. Yes, he's a very different driver to what he was 2 or 3 years ago, for sure. But he still has the capacity to get rattled. And that may happen in the second half of the season, especially if Lewis puts him under pressure with better form. Yeah, I just think there's more circumstances in Hamilton's favour to win the 8th title. As for the Constructors, I do believe that will go to Mercedes as well. I think Bottas will just outperform Perez to get that first place for Mercedes. Now, it will be very close to Constructors, and so will the drivers, but I just think Bottas will edge out Perez in that second driver battle to give Mercedes that boost to win the Constructors. Now, if Mercedes do win both titles like it's predicted, that's massive because they haven't been developing their car as aggressively as Red Bull, and you could say for the majority of the season, Red Bull have had a stronger car. So if Mercedes managed to beat that, that's huge for them, and it also puts them in very good stead for 2022 as well. So that is how I think the rest of 2021 is going to play out.